As the national organization,
why are you spinning me? Why are you spinning me?
I want you to clarify.
Let me talk.
I'll let you talk.
Let me talk. Get the tension out of your chest. Okay. People have been running around, oh, the election was rigged.
Didn't the Democrats do that when in 2016? They had a whole Russia collusion investigation for 3 years?
I do want to also say, just like out of respect to the military men that have PTSD, they actually served in the war. You were not actually a slave. I find that to be a bit offensive.
Wait.
The last thing I want to say.
No.
The last thing I want to say.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be watching an oldie but a goldie from the Candace Owens show, where she takes on Hawk Newsom, a BLM activist, and this one gets very feisty indeed. So with that, let's get into the clips.
Obviously, I've been covering extensively how hypersexualized the culture has become. This is just not the same America that I grew up in. And obviously, as someone who grew up, used public transportation, buses, subways, seeing this stuff as an ad, like people, their tongues touching and saying pansexual for an ad for OkCupid, how do you guys feel about it?
Well, I think that, I want people to understand that this is not an accident. It's not like somebody accidentally drew that up. People spend billions of dollars in marketing. So it's a strategic marketing strategy, and it is effectively hurting our youth. Grown-up adults who are participating in this, they may understand how to deal with the images that they see, but young kids are not able to process this properly. However, I do believe that it's targeted to get young people's minds conditioned, so when they do get older, they're more susceptible to buying into what this advertisement is showing.
Right, what do you think, Hawk?
I just can't really understand why people can't let others live and let live. In my Bible, it says that God should judge people, and we should not. I believe it says something like, judge not, lest ye be judged. Unless God came down and ordained people with the power to judge all gay people, then we should still be staying true to that word.
That wasn't gay.
No.
I don't care if it's two straight people and their tongues are interlocking on the subway. I would have a problem with it. So let's not make this a gay thing. It's not about being gay. It's like, I'm talking about sexualization, right? So two tongues touching. Let's pretend it was a man and a female, and they were both straight. I still have a problem with it. You're saying you think it's fine.
Well, it's people kissing. As you know, the more we progress as a society, the restraints get looser, right? The further we move away from God, the more it opens up the world to do whatever it pleases, right? So I can't necessarily say that this is wrong. I can't say this is wrong. People kiss on TV every day. People kiss everywhere all the time, but now it's wrong. Why do you have a problem with it?
Because I think it's disgusting for children to see two tongues of adults touching in a subway, and I am raising a child, and I would never want to walk somewhere. And again, don't care if you're black, white, straight, trans, pansexual, I don't even know what half of these terms even mean anymore. I don't want to see it, okay? And that's not kissing. Two tongues, that is not kissing, right? That is something else that's happening there, right? It's disgusting. It's meant to be provocative, and it's unnecessary that an advertiser sat down and thought that this was the only way to convey a message when you're talking about OkCupid, which is supposed to be a dating app. Like, why does it even need to be sexual at all? This is not what the ads looked like when we were growing up.
I think it's hypocritical because you got the whole world on Tinder, you got the whole world hooking up with people, but now it's not. Now you don't want to see it in your face, but we've been seeing it in movies, we've been seeing it on television. Now all of a sudden people have a problem with it. Okay, if we're going to say this is problematic, then we need to take a step back and look throughout the decades and say, okay, this is the process. This is how we arrived at this point. We can't just act like this is something new to us.
I agree. I do. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm taking issue with the way society has gone down the drain.
Let me interject real quick. Let's go back to the Bible, about judging. The Bible is very clear. You should know them by their fruit.
Yes.
So the things that are in the Bible doesn't say that you shouldn't judge people. You can't condemn a person, but you can make an evaluation about what you think is appropriate according to what God's word is. And so when you go, I think we're on the same page. We're saying that these things are not appropriate. It's fair to say that as a Christian man, as a believer, these are not appropriate. Neither are the movies that they're presenting kissing in that are eligible for young people. I'm not talking about rated R movies. I'm not talking about PG-13 movies. I'm talking about ones that are involving children that are rated for younger audiences. When you have kissing and sexuality, I think it's inappropriate. So just because they put it out there, just because it's mainstream, doesn't mean that it's not inappropriate.
Are we back at a place where we are arguing again sex ed in school?
Yeah, I think sex ed is a disaster.
Are we back at that point?
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to go back to.
Well, if you want to go back to that, if we didn't introduce it, then AIDS would have claimed more lives than it did. If we didn't take a step
factually
back,
incorrect.
prove it.
I'm happy
Prove
to.
it.
I'm happy to.
Prove it.
So
Because
I'm going to right now.
if you let me talk, sis,
go ahead.
you like to spin people. I'm unspinnable. I'm 300 pounds. You ain't gonna spin this one. All right. If you look back, we had to educate people as to what sex was so that we could stop the spread of those sexually transmitted diseases.
That's incorrect.
How
That's
so?
factually incorrect.
How
So
so?
I am going to educate you. I don't need to spin you, but I am going to educate you.
Please do.
Okay, so there's a book by Thomas Sowell, and he unpacks very carefully how sex education actually, what it's led to is more kids having sex than other. It was predicated on a lie. The entire sex education push was predicated on this belief that high school students were doing it anyways. They were already having sex, and that was wrong. Actually, before they started the sex ed initiative in the 1970s, the average kid that was graduating high school was graduating with their virginity. After they started the sex ed initiative, within 1 decade, that radically transformed, and now the majority of kids are doing it. Actually, sex education was teaching them about what sex was, and that conversation should have been reserved for their parents in the birds and the bees discussion. So sex ed has perverted children, not the other way around.
And I think when
I just want to respond, and I just want to keep them clapping, because if we go back decades ago, people were having children in their teens. People were being married in their teens. So now you're telling me, it's all false. No, we can look up that one site, but I'm talking about other individuals and other people who have proved that we needed sex ed in our schools to wake our children up to the fact that there are diseases
it was sponsored by
that
Planned
can
Parenthood dollars.
kill them.
It was sponsored by Planned Parenthood dollars.
We can
and
argue.
The idea was to get these
we can
kids
argue
to,
a lot of things, but the truth is the truth.
I just told you the truth.
No, you told me what you read in a book about a person who you admire or you choose to adopt.
No, not about a person who I admire.
It's someone who you choose to adopt their philosophies. The problem with this country, the problem with this country is we take the words of people on TV. We take the words of politicians. Instead of doing research for ourselves, we live in a society where people perpetuate lies, and it continues to create this divide in our country instead of looking at the truth. What is our aversion to the truth? The truth offends people now. People don't want to hear the truth. Why? Because there's so many people out here spinning the truth.
Well, I just told you the truth, so I just want to tell you that.
You told me your truth.
No, I didn't tell you the truth. Thomas Sowell is not a politician. He's actually a researcher, getting back to research.
So Thomas Sowell is Jesus, and the rest of these people are simple followers who know nothing about
Hold on. Kids became more sexualized. More kids.
I worked on this as a kid. I was a peer sex educator as a kid. Okay. I worked on this.
Okay, so on the topic of sex education, I want to give a little bit more context as to what Candace is talking about here, the nature of sex education, and the wider issue of the sexualization of culture over time and the detrimental effect that it has on our society. So sex education was gathering steam in the 1960s concurrently with a bunch of other very nefarious things.
In this film, we are going to discuss quite frankly the things that are normal and to be expected in the development of children in relation to sex.
In 1960, the birth control pill became legal nationwide in America.
It's probably the most revolutionary development of the 20th century. I don't think that's hyperbole, because it changed the lives of half the population.
The 60s was obviously the time of the sexual revolution, and there were events in the 60s that preceded Roe v. Wade, which in 1973 established that the right of privacy of a woman to obtain an abortion must be considered against important state interests and regulations.
Obviously, it's a concern for all women. All women face the problem of forced childbearing.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what was happening during that time that would start us along the process of a slippery slope to where we are today. I mean, maybe all of this sexualization, all of this anti-civilizational, anti-Christian, anti-family, anti-truth, goodness, and beauty legislation and cultural influences, maybe it was all just a coincidence. Anyways, to the point of what Candace Owens was saying, Thomas Sowell puts forward the case and the evidence for why sex education was actually a terrible and detrimental thing on American society. This is detailed in his book, Inside American Education. So the federal government's support of family planning went from 14 million in 1968 to 279 million a decade later. This is because in 1968, it was claimed that contraception education is urgently needed to help prevent pregnancy and diseases in high school girls. The head of Planned Parenthood testified before Congress in 1966 as to the need for sex education to assist young people in reducing the incidence of out-of-wedlock births, venereal diseases, etc. The head of the New York City Educational Board got behind it, as did the American School Board Journal, the New York Times, and much more.
It is a movement which tries to make each child a wanted child born to responsible parents. This is only possible if the parents plan their parenthood.
So what was the cause for all of this catastrophic alarmism, you might be thinking? Well, the truth was that fertility rates as well as teen pregnancies had been decreasing. Gonorrhea and syphilis, for example, had been steadily declining since 1950. And so with all of these very positive trends in mind, they decided to come up with a solution. And this solution was massive federal funding to sex education programs, schools, and family planning clinics. Okay, so sex education programs in schools started rapidly growing and spread throughout the education system, and the pregnancy rate amongst teenage girls started to rise with it. The out-of-wedlock birth rate rose 29% from 1970 to 1984. The rate of teenage gonorrhea tripled from 1956 to 1975. So let me get this straight. The trends were all going in the right direction, and then they started campaigning and saying that there's a big crisis happening and getting lots of money from the government. And then they went right ahead and spent that money on family planning clinics and sex education in schools to actually create the crisis that they claimed was happening. And then still to this day, despite all of the overwhelming evidence that is in your face if you look it up, they keep on pouring taxpayer dollars into these programs, enriching those in charge and ripping at the fabric of our societies, destroying the nuclear family, causing millions of abortions every year. And all sorts of sexual degeneracy. I mean, nothing to see here. The BLM guy is totally right. We should continue to sexualize the youth and probably give more money to those programs. Anyways, on to the next, where they talk about a bit of discrimination and the vax. But before we get there, guys, make sure to pound that like button and hit that subscribe button if you are enjoying this content, if you want to be a part of the community. Let's get into the next bit.
I agree with you that people shouldn't blindly take the vaccine. If that's what you want to do your research.
Yeah.
It should be a choice. People shouldn't be made to do that. However, I disagree with this being racial.
How so?
I don't believe that it's racial. Just because there's disparities doesn't mean that there's discrimination. Thomas Sowell wrote a book about that, Disparities in Spinach.
Y'all love this man.
He's great.
Is this like a cult?
Do you know who Thomas Sowell is?
No, I have to read up on him.
You don't know who Thomas Sowell is?
No, I do not.
Okay, so after you get off the show, go look at Thomas Sowell. They have a documentary. You can look it online. He's the smartest, most brilliant man, black man to ever exist.
Okay.
Smartest guy.
Smartest black man.
To ever exist.
Smarter than Malcolm X.
To ever exist.
Smarter than Jesus.
To ever exist.
Smarter than Jesus.
To ever exist.
Because that was a smart black man.
Yeah, Jesus wasn't just a man, so we can't count Jesus like that. All right, so
he was black though, right?
So yeah, but what I'm saying is that, well, you could say he had darker skin. I mean, we can go down that argument. But anyway.
But let's stay focused.
We're gonna stay we'll stay focused on this. So I don't think it has much to do with race, but I think it's a correlation here, right? You see that these vaccines disproportionately affect black people.
Yeah.
The same way with certain other things in our society that disproportionately affect black people, like the welfare state and other things that Democrats do, disproportionately affect black people. And so I see
Republicans have had their hand in racist policies.
Let him finish.
We could talk about, you could talk about a hand, but I'm talking about the overall scheme here. You cannot deny that Democrats have been overwhelmingly responsible for the degradation of the black community. Even now, who's pushing the vaccine?
Now here's the thing. You asked me a question, but you want to keep talking.
Let me just ask you this question, and then you do this. Who's pushing the vaccine right now? Which political party?
I can talk now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Y'all starting to like me. I appreciate that. Here's the problem.
I just want to say I have like 4 of the topics I want to get to.
We go. You know we always run over.
I know,
Last
but
time we went an hour over.
I know.
Okay, so
This should be real quick.
Real quick. The Democrats and the Republicans have oppressed black people. America's a racist place.
No, it's not.
Okay. Yes. Every statistic indicates that it is.
Give me an example.
An example: systemic racism.
Let's talk about policing.
Let's talk about policing. I would love to talk about policing.
Are you saying that policing?
But let's talk about education first, because everybody's like, oh, he's Black Lives Matter. He's going to talk about policing. Let's talk about.
But you don't agree. But you don't agree with Black Lives Matter, do you?
Let's talk about
as the national organization.
Why are you spinning me? Why are you spinning me?
I want you to clarify.
Let me talk.
I'll let you talk.
Let me talk. Let me talk. Get the tension out of your chest. Fall back. Take a sip of water.
I think you said more words than everybody, so let's not pretend he's not letting you talk.
No, because it's 2 against 1.
No,
Y'all
it's
are best
not, brother.
friends.
I'm not
This
ganging
is
up on
Bonnie
you.
and Clyde of the Republican Negro Brigade, right? so here we go. Systemic racism, redlining, right? Candace always talks about black economics. The reason why black people are so far behind in the wealth gap is because programs were set in place to deny us loans, to deny us home ownership, to deny us access to an education. And this has been a trickle-down effect. This is still proven.
Sorry, what program denied us access to education?
There was education in and of itself. We were not allowed into schools.
Yeah, but you said a program.
This is, I'm sorry, systemic racism. Systemic
like an all
racism.
catchphrase.
So
What program?
programs like, what was it, the 1934 Housing Rights Act, I believe it was, denied us access to banking, right? We couldn't get mortgages, we couldn't get insurance. So here
I'm
you
talking about
had,
education.
here you
I asked you
had,
about
here you
education.
had black people who couldn't hand down a house to their children. Black people who couldn't get insurance policies, so when they had died, their families couldn't bury them properly. Their families couldn't have wealth. This is a system. This came under Roosevelt. And this is a very real thing. Like I'm not a Democrat.
Yeah.
I'm not a Republican. I'm a purveyor of truth to the American
what's really interesting?
public.
I don't think you
everybody
answered the
can
question
find that. No, because the thing is,
about
you
education,
keep
but
throwing
you
things.
do.
You
One
want to
thing
talk
you
about
always
education.
go back to is redlining, and it's great. I mean,
What
FDR.
about the-
but I just
Now-
whenever
now
if you have
see
to,
why I
let me
have
finish
to,
my statement.
You see
Hawk,
why I have to
if you
talk
ever have
because
to
you're
go all the way
talking,
back to the
and then he jumps in.
1930s.
Because you got
All
to
the
be
way
quick.
back to the
You gotta be quick with
1930s.
the point.
Black people, no, I don't have to be
You keep
quick
going
with the
back to
point.
the
It's very
1930s.
Actually, if you want to teach me how to shoot, talk about shooting cop. If you want to talk to me about making a point, then you need to look at my law school education.
Okay, but
All right.
We're not in the
you just told me you were
courtroom.
gonna get-
If my man was such an expert at making points and his degree served him so well, because I don't know if you guys noticed, but he has a law degree, then he would surely know not to make an argument from authority like that and not to commit such a brazen logical fallacy and to actually make a good point. Anyways, to suggest that black people were specifically oppressed during the COVID period because of their skin color is absolutely absurd. I mean, I'm pretty white and I'm Australian and I couldn't go into restaurants, I couldn't go into cafes, I couldn't cross state borders, I couldn't travel to many different places during that time. And it's not because I'm white. It's because we were living under a medical tyranny. And for him to go and tell Brandon Tatum to get the tension out of his chest as if Tatum is being overly aggressive is one of the most egregious examples of projection I think I've ever seen. And it really does demonstrate a lack of self-awareness that is bordering on critical, because he looks overly and weirdly and uncomfortably aggressive while Brandon Tatum looks very pleasant and respectful. And it doesn't get any better from here. So let's carry on.
Mention the things that the government has done. I'm saying, what are the things that black people have to be responsible for? Personal responsibility. When it comes to education, when it comes to showing up at the school board, when it comes to teaching your children at home, and when it comes to being married and having children in a stable home. All of those things are personal responsibilities that the black community have to be responsible for as well. I mean, you're talking about government entities. That's not everything. When you talk about people not getting access to loans, that's not every black person. When you talk about education system being flawed in the black community, that's not every black person. You have a lot of
Wait. See, this is why I have to talk over people.
You don't have to. We'll give you a chance to talk.
You said something that warranted a response. You said something that warranted a response.
I was trying to add one sentence to Brandon. I was just going to say, Brandon, did you know that in another Thomas Sowell book, that it actually tells you that black people are more likely to be declined from a bank that's a black-owned bank rather than a white-owned bank? Did you also know that that Asians are accepted at a higher rate than white people in this country? I learned that in a Thomas Sowell book. I just wanted to add those little tidbits.
Here's what it is. This is American politics, right? People with their views want to shout at people instead of allowing them to make their points. This is the problem.
That sound good.
This is the absolute problem. You said I had to go all the way back.
He's gonna be so
you had to go
confused.
all the way back to the 1930s, but I made a point about failing schools across the country right now. He said something about black accountability, and as I sat here and described a program that is unlike any other country. Any other in the country, black opportunities, that is like any other in the country, that is unlike any other civil rights organization in America. When I'm trying to lay that down to you, when I'm trying to tell you how I could start teaching kids about tech, how I can start getting people vocational skills from early on, giving kids an education outside of what they're dealing with in these garbage schools. When I start talking about that, I get cut off.
You constantly think that you're in this victim mentality.
I'm in
but
a
we're
victim
actually
mentality.
Just trying to have a
Meanwhile,
conversation.
Trump supporters have been crying since he lost the election. You're such a hypocrite.
Okay.
People have been running around, oh, the election was rigged. Oh, there's something wrong here. I'm like, oh my God, isn't this what they accused us of doing?
Well, didn't the Democrats do that when in 2016? They had a whole Russia collusion investigation for 3 years?
Yeah. But guess what? I'm not a fan of the Democratic Party.
Me neither.
I am a follower of Malcolm X, who said that the Republicans were wolves and the Democrats are wolves in sheep's clothing.
And what does Black Lives Matter?
What does Black Lives Matter? Now,
An organization controlled by white Democrats.
Now you have to really understand there's a hierarchy to Black Lives Matter. There is Black Lives Matter Global. That's whatever they're doing over there. Then there are the people who go outside, who watch someone like George Floyd being murdered on television, who watch people like Eric Garner being choked to death. You have people like that who just go out, who it hurts, and just want to go outside and say, stop the racism. And then you have independent organizations like ours, like Black Lives Matter Greater New York, who operates in a very effective way. Nobody will tell you we fed 15,000 people last year in the height of COVID. Nobody will tell you that we raised that money without the help of New York City government. Nobody will tell you that I opened the only Montessori school in the Bronx, New York. School systems are failing. We created a school that caters to the needs of our children. Those are the things that don't make the news because they're not clickbait.
You know what, guys? That was actually enlightening for me because it's actually good to know why all of the BLM supporters came out after George Floyd's death and burnt down cities. I mean, it was ultimately just because they were hurting. They were sad. So they felt like they had to go and firebomb a Wendy's. It makes sense now. I mean, in hindsight, I feel a deep sense of compassion for them and I realize that they did the right thing. So I do appreciate that. And maybe next time when these riots are happening, I'll be one of those Antifa people who comes out and wears the mask and, you know, says I'm sorry and sort of grovels at their feet and kisses their feet and everything. Maybe that'll be my strategy next time.
No longer can be here. In honor of this legacy, we ask for forgiveness from our black brothers and sisters for years and years of racism, of systematic racism.
Anything I can do to try and take the pain away. And now onto the last bit where our boy Hawk here makes some more very goofy points. And they are very easily dismantled. And because he's getting destroyed so badly, he starts to go into full-on aggressive, don't let anybody speak, civil rights martyr victim mode. It's really something to see.
He's grabbing him by the shirt, and he's got
Worse
the
than
horse
slavery.
rein. Yeah, horse
Worse than
rein
slavery.
still trying to grab him by the shirt. Okay, Hawk, your thoughts?
I'm afraid I can't give people the response that they would want. I see Haitians. I see people whose country has been ravaged by atrocity after atrocity, earthquakes, hurricanes, the Clintons, like these people are hopeless and they are trying to make it to the land of opportunity. I'm not having a whole debate, but as a Christian, I feel compassion for those people. The imagery, when it first hit, looked terrible, right? Now, even looking at this, it does evoke. Like, I would love for you all to look up a study by the American Psychology Association about racial trauma, right? Because it's really a thing, and it has a similar effect as PTSD. Any soldiers out there, you might know what I'm talking about.
Well, we didn't have this going on when Trump was president, though, obviously. The numbers that are coming in right now are like nothing we've ever seen before. And I think a wall would work, but also maybe not because they're taking flights. Yeah, why do you think they're coming now?
What?
Those Haitians weren't,
Yeah,
there
why
were
do you think they're coming now?
thousands coming to the border when Trump was president.
Yeah, but-
Like, people come to America.
We did not have a
People
surge.
come to America. Most
Okay.
of the people here
Let's be realistic.
today.
We did not have a surge of Haitians showing up at our
All right.
border when Trump was president. So I'm just asking a question. Why do you think they're coming now?
You know what? the world is in a destitute place. We were ravaged by COVID, whether you believe in COVID or not. The economy was shut down. There's been a lot of problems. Like, America has a problem with Black migrants, with migrants of color. When they were rounding people up, I didn't see one Russian person in handcuffs. Like when we had the raids in New York, when I used to have to go to make sure that ICE wasn't beating the crap out of people, it wasn't in white neighborhoods. So you mean to tell me white people aren't here illegally?
America has a problem with Black immigrants. Are you or brown immigrants? What are you saying? I want to get this straight from you.
Well, I don't.
Are you including Mexicans?
Yes.
Do you know that they account for over 50% of all of our immigrants? So we have a problem with over 50% of all of our immigrants.
But what about the Asian immigrants?
Well, they can't run over the border, so they actually come in legally.
So
Asia's pretty far.
Wait. We've been here before.
Yeah.
We've been here before.
How many?
There are two borders. People sneak into this country of all walks of life. Stop making.
How many illegal Asian immigrants do you think we have in America?
Give people the truth.
I'm telling you the truth.
Everybody comes into the country, and Democrats and Republicans alike make these exploitative mockeries of immigration by just pointing to the ones who are of color, who are politically poignant.
Listen, African immigrants come here illegally. No, this is just not true. Hulk, I can't just let you say something that just makes no sense, okay? African immigrants come here legally. Asian immigrants come here legally. They're separated by oceans, so yes, that's the reason why.
African people come here illegally as well.
But not in the issue that we have right now, not in a surge. Yes, there are some illegal African immigrants. There aren't 200,000 at the border trying to come in, okay? That just is not what's happening. Be realistic. The illegal immigration problem is almost exclusively a problem that's happening at the south of the border.
You paint with these wide brushes and you deny people the truth.
You're not painting with any brushes.
Do me a favor, to everybody who's watching, stop listening to people on TV and read a effing book.
Okay,
I brought up Thomas Sowell.
Use Google.
Let me jump in.
I brought up 3 Thomas Sowell books.
Let me jump in.
Listen.
I brought up 3 Thomas Sowell books, and you shut those down too. So do you what do you want?
Let me interject.
Right? John Henry Clark.
Let me interject.
Let's talk about Black authors who I read. Like, I'm a huge fan of James Baldwin. Like, just because I don't read thank you. You can clap. You can clap. It's all right. It's all right to be a lone person in the majority. No, it's really okay. It's real, especially when people are trying to suppress your thoughts.
Nobody is suppressing your thoughts. I'm suppressing what is actually incorrect, and I'm correcting it, and you're getting upset. And when I correct it with an actual book, you say that book is not good enough. And then when I correct it with an actual fact, you say go read a book.
This is very simple. We have immigration laws. It's very simple. If you want to come through a port of entry. Nobody gets rejected at a port of entry. You go through a proceeding. Now, if you go under the fence, you go over the fence, you start getting caught out on the Rio Grande, yeah, you're going to get detained. It's very simple. It's very simple.
If people are fleeing political persecution, they're fleeing a country ravaged and devastated, I have a heart. I care about people. Now, if you want to talk about this country, the Democrats saying, hey, it's an open border, it's a lie, bro. Okay, listen to what I'm saying. Let them saying. This is why I can't finish in 40 seconds.
No, understand
listen, what you're saying. You're saying they're encouraging them, saying them that it's open
What
borders.
I'm saying is a lie.
The problem is what politicians say to you and what they actually do is not a new concept. That's American as apple pie. So they're saying, yes, when Trump is in office, come. Now, they're in power. They're like, stop. I can't do anything for you. Like, I'm not here to argue politics. I just love people.
Yeah. I also want to say that to that point earlier that you said about PTSD, what did you say, post-Black syndrome or something, which is akin to people in the military. Racial trauma. And you said when you saw these whips, or, same with slavery, which you said is akin to PTSD of people that were in the military. And you said it's a similar thing that you experienced when you at first thought that people were being whipped. The Haitians were being whipped.
Imagery has an effect.
Imagery has an effect. I do want to also say, just like out of respect to the military men that have PTSD, they actually served in the war. You were not actually a slave. I find that to be a bit offensive.
Wait.
The last thing I want to say.
Wait. No.
The last thing I want to say.
You absolutely,
Ridiculous to say that you have
will not say that.
There's a trauma that you suffered that you experienced.
I will not allow that to ride.
You weren't a slave. You don't have PTSD from slavery.
And racist system.
Where were you whipped? Where were you whipped at a horse whip?
Under the 13th Amendment of the United States
with a law degree and no
Constitution.
education.
When you
PTSD
bash
from
people
slavery,
like Naomi Osaka, who has mental issues, you bash people with mental illness. That's what you do.
And you just
You're trying to spin the story here.
You bash people who have mental illness, so of course you would
Well,
dismiss
yes, you know what? I
the
think
whole
it is a
theory
mental
of
illness
racial
if you
trauma.
think that you're suffering from
Of
PTSD
course.
from slavery, you've never been a slave. I'm not
Of
bashing you, I'm just
course.
calling
It's
it out.
the after
That
effects
PTSD
of
do not
slavery.
correlate it to the
It's
military men who are
racism
suffering
in
from something they
America.
actually experienced.
And you have a platform where you
said
can tell
slavery.
people the truth, but you make a lot of money spewing these lies.
But you got 3 black people up here
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
in this.
Tons of money.
It's such
Tons
a
of money.
racist
I
country.
live in the South Bronx,
and we got 3 black people who are very
in the
successful.
congressional district in America. I live in the poorest
Guys.
congressional district.
So, like I said, some pretty goofy takes there. And honestly, for him and all of the other BLM activists of his era, for that matter, this has really aged like milk. And the reason for that is because BLM has just been totally and utterly exposed for the corrupt Marxists that they truly are. And as time goes on, anybody with a brain has denounced them. And it's only really the bottom of the barrel that is still clinging on to BLM. But hey, maybe they will make a resurgence at some point. Anyways, that's it for me today, guys. Hit those links below if you would like to check out my socials and other channels. Come and say g'day. And if you would like to subscribe to the channel, right here. If you'd like to watch another video, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.